Hi HR Nation, it's Chris Rainey. Welcome to HR Leaders, the show where we interview today's most successful and innovative HR leaders. Today we have a special guest. We're lucky enough to be joined by William Tincup. William is a writer, speaker, investor, an advisor and president at Recruiting Daily. William, welcome to the show.
Absolutely. Thanks, Chris, for having me. I'm excited to be here and kind of can't wait to get right into it.
Fantastic. Well, look, for the small number of members that don't know who you are already, fill in the gaps. Tell HR Nation a little bit more about yourself and your journey in the world of HR.
Sure. I came up kind of in a non-traditional role and fell in love with HR and in kind of a way that a lot of people here in America don't. I came up through marketing. So I came up through marketing and my own ad agency that focused on the vendors that sold to HR.
Oh, right.
And so, you know, the Workdays and SAPs and Oracles of the world and all the staffing agencies. And so we essentially repped those people into recruiting and HR, and I fell in love with HR. And in a part of that, over that 10 years that I owned the ad agency, I did all the HR. So I did all the recruiting, I ran payroll, I found myself doing HR, you know, components of HR, and falling in love with the HR practitioner. After that, I sold my equity in that. Then I opened up a consulting firm, user adoption for HR software, again, dealing mostly with HR professionals. Then John Sumser and I built a market research firm called Key Interval, kind of like a Gartner, and is an analyst shop, analyzing the HR experience, specifically around user adoption and implementation of software, etc. And most recently, in the last 2 years, I moved over to a media company, which is Recruiting Daily, is a content play for all people hiring. So staffing, executive search, third party, RPO, MSP, corporate, however you hire people. So we do content and events over there. And but I've always focused on the intersection of HR and technology. I'm curious about technology, and because I used to help market, I used to do a lot of demos, and you know, through that career, that's kind of been from 4 different vantage points. The audience has always been HR and recruiting. The people that I've made money from, if you will, my economic model has always been on the vendor side. So I've worked with, I think at this point, it's over 1,200 vendors. So I know the vendor marketplace really well. Like if someone asked me, hey, behavioral interviews, you know, for retailers, who do you got?
Yeah.
I probably have a short list of people that say, okay, here's the 5 people you should do a demo of. And so that's how I came up. But I'll tell you, in short, I love marketing, but marketing people at their core, when you do a lot of marketing over time, you can become a little cynical. Not everyone, and not everyone's become cynical or jaded or pessimistic, but you can be, as opposed to HR, who sees the darkness of an organization. They see everything. They're on the sexual harassment claims, the investigations. They know everyone's pay. They know all the dark crevices and all the things that are wrong with a company, and yet they still have hope. And so what I've fallen in love with and why I love HR so much is that these are people still at their core that have hope, even in spite of all of that darkness.
Sure.
So that's how I got into HR.
And that's literally what they signed up for. That's a daily occurrence in HR. So it does take a pretty special person to work in that environment. So where you are now at this point in your career, what would you say is your area of expertise then?
So I go, even though I work for Recruiting Daily, and recruiting is, we tend to look at recruiting as the center of HR. So a lot of people, it's popular belief is that you should separate recruiting and HR and make recruiting closer to marketing, just take it out of HR. And I don't believe that. I actually believe in my heart that recruiting is the center of HR. And if you get recruiting right, everything else after is easier. And if you get recruiting wrong, everything after is harder. So succession and comp and performance and learning and training and all the other things that we have to do. I think if you hire the right people then that stuff, all of the critical things from onboarding on, all of those critical things are easier if you hire the right people.
Mm-hmm.
And if your hiring process is broken, if your hiring technologies are not integrated, broken, then all of those, let's just say you hire the wrong people. Your time to hire, your time to fill, your quality hire, all your metrics are scattered all over the floor. Then everything in HR becomes, in my opinion, becomes substantively harder because of the poor job in hiring. So I kind of that's the vantage point. If I look at recruiting not as separate, I look at it as we've got to get this right. Because if we get sourcing, candidate relationship, candidate experience, the ATS and compliance, and we get all that stuff right, and we have the right candidate flow, and we interview them in the right way, then all the other stuff, it's not like it's all those things become easy. That's not what I'm saying. I'm saying that
I see what you mean.
Right? There's just
there's a knock-on effect, right?
That's exactly right. A ripple in a pond.
Mm-hmm.
But I'd say I look at end-to-end technology. So I look at the sourcing technology on the front end of that process and outplacement technology on the back end of that process.
Mm-hmm.
Because a human being can only have 3 relationships with a company. You're either a candidate, an employee, or alumni. That's it. So in those experiences, the candidate experience, the employee experience, the alumni experience, there's technologies that can be brought to bear that make those experiences better.
So what's one thing around recruitment you think HR leaders don't know or perhaps should be paying more attention to?
Well, it's going to be easier to think of it this way. So we all have customers. Okay, so if we put on our customer hat for just a moment and think of all the time, money, and energy our company has invested, the millions, if not billions of dollars that have been invested in the customer experience. What we want the customer to feel, smell, think, hear, et cetera, all the senses. Pointing all of that towards those candidates, employees, and alumni. So all of the either technology or the process, but even just being thoughtful. And so much of like the popular concept of candidate experience really kind of boils down to being a good human. Like it's not it's not complex.
Underrated.
yeah, it's not complex. And that's it's almost like you take all the world religions, combine them in one and say, okay, just be a nice person. Okay, like if you're just a nice person, that's at least half of it. So I think if for HR, we don't need to we don't need to church it up or sex it up in any way. We just look at those different, candidates, employees, alumni, and say, what can we do to make their experience better?
Mm-hmm.
And that becomes both process, people, and product, the 3 Ps.
Yeah, perfect. And looking towards the future in terms of HR skills, do you feel that the skill set of a HR leader has now changed, obviously with technology coming into play? What skills do you think will be more important moving forward in the future? Well,
I think that we're always going to have our experiences. So I think that it's almost like this polarities of art and science, right? But if you really study art, at the end of art is science. So if you talk to an artist that's been in the game, Chuck Close, great painter. You talk to Chuck, you find out that after 40 years of doing the thing, it's about chemistry. It's about biology. It's about all of these hard sciences. And the same thing is true with science. You talk to a physicist that's been in the game for 40 years, and at the end of physics is art. So what we have in HR was we grew up experiential. We have experiences. We have a gut. We have our feelings. We have our truths as we see them, as we felt them, as we've heard them and learned them, etc. Now what we're being asked to do is to balance those things, not to replace, but to balance those things with data.
Mm-hmm.
And so, you have the rest of the organization that's making 80% of the decisions based on data. Not all, So finance, accounting, ops, sales, marketing, go around the wheel. Everyone else is making decisions based on data, data-driven decisions. That is what our future entails, is how do we make data-driven decisions and balance that out with the experiential. So it's a balancing of science and art for us, where we've been leaning really heavily for the last 50 years on art. And that's okay. That's actually, there's nothing wrong with that.
Yeah.
Let's not try to avoid that. That's okay. Because it's also, that's what we have, those things. Now what we have to do is look at the skills, probably more of the hard science skills, the STEM skills, science, technology, engineering, and math. We need to learn more about statistics. We need to be more comfortable in Excel and spreadsheets and data and databases and coding. And so the future is more on the sciences side to bring that back and to where we can really understand data, both where it originates, how to read it, how to understand it, what to do with it, and then to balance that against our own experiences. Because the data is never going to tell you exactly what to do. No. It's going to give you an idea of what's going on and some potential recommendations. So we never should aspire to get the human out of human resources.
Supporting the art, right?
That's all it is. That's it. That's all it is. And so when I coach HR pros, I typically say, first of all, everything that you've learned till now, you're not going to lose any of that. But what we need to add to the arrows in the quiver, if you will, we need to add some other skills that are more hard science. You need to be comfortable with statistics, comfortable saying things like a standard deviation, or using an Excel spreadsheet and talking about pivot tables, and talking about how databases are built and metrics in a way that our peers are already doing. So marketing went through this 20 years ago.
Yeah.
And so I still, because I did a bunch of internships with ad agencies, I still remember an era where advertising was about art.
Yeah, so it's so funny how, and as soon as you said about marketing going through it, I can immediately see that now, but I never thought about it before, about what traditional marketing to where we are now, where it's all about data.
You can't find, here in America, you can't find a decent marketer that understands art. And
that's crazy to think about, isn't it?
That's right. So I think that's some of our future. If we were to say 20 years from now, it might be hard to find an HR manager, someone young in their career, that is as empathetic as our HR leaders are today. It's going to be more science, and that's a pendulum, right? That's just going to be a pendulum that swings out and it'll swing back. But ultimately, this is on us. We need to learn, and we need to embrace that learning and say, you know what? Everyone else has learned this. Sales has been through this. Ops, finance, everybody's been through this. It's our turn. Okay, we need to now start to embrace technology and math and science, and not run from it, but embrace it and say, hey, it's not going to be perfect, but neither are our experiences. So, but by balancing those two out, by weighing those two with and against each other, you can then make some more informed decisions. And I see this in the boardroom or the executive roundtable where, Sally, what do you think? It's like, well, the data says this. And here, based on my experience, here's what I think we should do based on what the data is telling us. Mm-hmm. And that's how Sally's going to talk. That's how Jim's going to talk. That's how Sally's going to talk. And that's okay. And right now, that isn't how we talk, generally speaking.
It's a very interesting way you put it there. Very unique way. So how do HR leaders start to prepare for this? Or, one of the questions that we get often, the minefield of what is HR software. There's so much out there and there's so much information coming at them. How do they prepare or approach buying HR software or investing in technology?
So the first thing is a deeply personal mission. It's this change is upon you. You can choose not to go through it, or you can choose to go through it and be better on the other side. And just like every other change that you've ever made in your life, it's going to be hard. Learning something new, not easy, turns out. Yeah. So the first thing is you got to stare at yourself in the mirror, which is all that other stuff. it all comes after. And that's why you got to look yourself in the mirror and go, do I want to make this next transition? Mm-hmm. And if the answer is yes, my hope is that it is yes, then it's like, okay, cool. Then I've made the decision. I'm going to start to embrace, science, technology, engineering, math. I'm going to start to engage with people to learn more about data. Okay. Like it almost becomes, you get excited now. Like, okay, I've decided I'm all in. Mm-hmm. And I'm going to go do it now. Okay, so there's all kinds of learning and coursework and mentorships and all that other stuff. But it's deeply personal, A. B, you've just got to commit to change. Yeah. And say, I'm in. I'm going to do it. And it doesn't age, gender, race, religion, none of that shit matters. Excuse me, none of that stuff matters. It's a personal decision between you and the mirror. And if you look at it that way and say, I'm down, I'm going to do this, I'm excited and terrified, go. And just throw yourself in. And if you do that, again, it's going to be hard. I'm not going to sugarcoat that. It's going to be hard. But you can envision yourself on the other side of that saying those things based on what the data is telling us, based on my substantive experience. Here's what I think we should do. Mm-hmm. And that's a better way today to make decisions. Go ahead.
No, definitely. So once they've reached that conclusion, obviously it's a big step. What conversations should they be having internally with internal stakeholders around HR tech?
Change every person that you interact with. So now it becomes a part of your philosophy that you, this is a downward at your peer group and superior, that don't just bring me your thoughts or your ideas. Bring me data that supports what we should do. And it won't be perfect. Like people will, when you interact with them, because they're mostly interacting with you with what they saw, what they thought, what they felt,
thoughts,
very emotional and not grounded in any type of data or science. So now you're actually going to change the game for everyone that works with you and around you. Mm-hmm. And that's a good thing, because that's going to also help you sort out who's in it for the long haul with you as you go through this change.